Don't skip out just because you're injured. My husband's relatives were going to get together at his parents' house, and I was on my way to go shopping the day before to help out when I had an accident. When I woke up, I was on a hospital bed. My mother was peering into my face against the white ceiling with a tearful look on her face. I tried to get up, but I could not move my body at all. I was in terrible shape, with gauze and bandages all over my body. I had apparently slept for an entire day, and I had already had a day of relatives gathering. There were apparently a large number of incoming calls from my husband on my smartphone. I asked my mother to check the incoming call log and found that several answering machines had been left. However, their contents were not of my concern. Hey, where are you wandering around? Didn't I tell you we were having a family reunion? Get your ass over here! The yells echoed. He seemed quite angry that I wasn't there. A little while after I finished playing, I received another call from my husband. My mother answered. Hey, hello! You finally picked up. Where are you? My mother tells him I'm hurt, but he doesn't listen at all. She's hurt so bad I can't even touch my phone. That's why she can't go help you. She's on a ventilator. After hanging up the phone, my mother quietly and angrily left the hospital room and went somewhere. I am Jen, 30 years old. I live with my husband, Ken, who is 5 years older than me. We met when he worked for one of my business partners. I work for a relatively large company, and I was in charge of Ken in sales, which led to our frequent conversations whenever he came to the office. Jen, would you like to have dinner with me? Do you have a favorite food? There's a restaurant near here that I recommend. At first, I responded blandly and went through the motions. I wondered what it would be like to have such a relationship with an employee of a business partner. However, his enthusiasm overcame my patience, and it's about time you at least went out to dinner. My colleague had told me so, and I finally shook my head. And so he took me to a hideaway dining room. Since we both had work the next day, we both ordered soft drinks. Even without alcohol, however, the conversation with Ken was fast-paced. This is an artist I've been listening to a lot lately. I like this song too. On my days off, I spend most of my time at home reading books and watching movies. I understand, I am also an indoor person. By the way, my favorite movie is... We had so many interests in common that we talked without losing track of time. Until that day, he was just a business partner, nothing more, nothing less, but after that day, I had a completely different impression of him as a nice person to talk to. We went out for dinner several times after that. We had only been going out after work, but then he asked me, Jen, would you like to go see a movie with me sometime? And we decided to meet around noon on our day off. We were supposed to have lunch first, watch a movie, have tea, and break up that day, but when we left the cafe, Ken asked me if I wanted to go to the park. There he confessed his feelings for me. He was so enthusiastic in his approach to me that I had somehow fallen in love with him as well, and we ended up going out. After 2 years of dating, Ken proposed to me and we got married, and my family name was changed to Miyahara. My in-laws and my sister-in-law, Sarah, were very kind and immediately relieved my nervousness and anxiety. Sarah, in particular, has taken good care of me. Are you okay? If you need any help, just let me know. Every time we saw each other, she worried about me. I was sure she was a kind and caring person. I smiled at her and said, "Don't worry. Ken is kind too, and I am very happy every day," I told her. Then she had a complicated expression on her face, one of relief, but also one of confusion as her eyebrows lowered. The reason for this look would become clear a little later. We did not live together before we got married. We started living together after we were registered, and then Ken's behavior changed. He would say, "Hey, where's the food? Why isn't my shirt ironed?" He began to show a kind of arrogant attitude toward his husband, saying things like, "You make less money than me anyway, so you should take care of the housework for me." It's about Ken. How did he live when he lived alone? I had a chance to meet with Sarah alone, so I decided to ask her. If someone who knew nothing about it had asked her, she would have looked at me suspiciously and said, "You were doing it yourself, weren't you?" But it seemed that it had occurred to her. Even if she didn't say it out loud, the look on her face said, "I knew it." In fact, Ken had a bit of a selfish disposition. Even when he was at home, he never helped out at all, saying, "Housework is for women." Even when he lived alone, he hired a housekeeper to do the housework. Sarah let out a big breath of exasperation. When we were dating, we only saw each other a few times a month, and we had never been to each other's homes before, so I had no idea. Here I finally understood why she worried about me so often. But I had a faint hope that he would surely change after the birth of our child. A little after we were married, I found out that I was pregnant. I rubbed her belly with new life and told her about it, and he was delighted. However, he never showed any sign of concern for me after that. He would tell me to do it without hesitation, even when I had to carry heavy things to clean up the mess. Eventually, morning sickness made me so nauseous that I could no longer move properly, so I had to quit my job. Then Ken started saying to me every day, "You don't even work during the day, and I'm the one who provides for you, so it's only natural that you do the housework, right?" He began to say, "You don't work during the day. I'm worried about my stomach when I'm cleaning the bathroom or doing housework that requires me to squat or stand, so I'd like you to take over." I asked him to do so, but he would not listen to me. The smell of food made me nauseous, and as the days when I could not cook increased, I asked her to buy some lunch and eat it, but she just kept yelling at me, "You want me to eat cold food?" He would yell at me and pull my arm to make me stand in the kitchen. "It's just for now. He will change when the baby is born." I believed that, and the day of the birth arrived. But he didn't change. He made me, who had just left the hospital, clean up the mess he made while he was in the hospital. I don't care if my son Alex cries and screams. He never had to hold him, change his diaper, or feed him milk. Whenever he cried at night, he always clicked his tongue before going to a different room. I was at my limit to do all the housework and childcare by myself, so I asked Sarah and my own mother for help. They both gladly accepted to help. My mother, of course, is used to it, as is Sarah, an older mother with children slightly older than I. Thanks to them, I, who was always sleep-deprived, was able to take naps and manage to get by. Ken's coming home time has been getting later and later since they started coming to help me. Sometimes he would say, "I have to entertain guests," and he would not come home. Sometimes he would come home late, but now it seems to be almost every day. I understand that he is in a certain position and has certain social obligations, but is it really necessary for him to go so many days in a row? I began to suspect that he was cheating on me. I didn't think so just because he came home late. He does not usually wear perfume, but when he comes home, he starts to smell softly and sweetly. And it was the same scent every time. It's because there is someone at work who is heavily perfumed. When I questioned him about it, he brushed it off. Not having seen the decisive scene, I could not press the question any further. Then one day, I was told that Ken's relatives would be gathering at his parents' house this coming weekend. He told me, "Of course you're going to be there. It's your duty as a wife to help out," and I had no choice but to go. It was difficult to help while taking care of my son. But it was doubtful that Ken, who had never participated in childcare before, would be able to take care of him during that time. Perhaps he saw through my thinking that I would have to ask my parents-in-law or Sarah to watch him. He said, "Oh, my sister can't come because her child is sick. You'll have to take care of little one yourself, won't you?" I was nailed to the wall. He was not interested in taking care of him. It seemed that he had never developed the awareness of being a parent. There were about 10 relatives who gathered at the party. It would take too much time to cook for that many people on the day of the party, so I decided to start preparing the day before. First, I left my son with my mother to go shopping and headed to the supermarket. I was walking for a while when a strong shock hit my body and I was lying on the ground. As it was getting dark in front of me, I fainted as I saw a white car driving by at a high speed. "Oh, Jen. Thank God, you're awake." When I came to, my mother was looking into my face against the white ceiling. Her eyes were moist and tears were threatening to spill over at any moment. I would have called out, "Mother," but no sound came out of my mouth. I tried to get up, but I could not move my body at all. Somehow I managed to move only my eyes to check my condition and found that my arms were wrapped in gauze and bandages. And an artificial respirator was attached to my mouth. The smell of alcohol from the disinfectant was wafting around me, though I could not detect it from my own body. So, I was rushed to the hospital after the accident. That shock was apparently caused by being run over. I was a little dazed from hitting my head on the ground, but I probably didn't lose my memory or anything. A doctor came to see me, probably called by my mother. "Jennifer, you've regained consciousness." Apparently, I had been asleep for a whole day, and the day of my relatives' gathering had already arrived. I guess my face showed my disbelief. My mother took the trouble to show me the date on the screen of her smartphone. "I've been getting calls from Ken on your cell phone since this morning. Maybe he's worried about you." Apparently, the smartphone was not broken and was functioning properly. Unable to move my own arm, I asked my mother to check the incoming call history. She seemed to have left some voicemails, so she played them back for me. "Hey, where are you wandering around? Didn't I tell you we were having a family reunion? What are you doing? Hey, get your ass over here." The yells echoed through the room. He seemed quite upset that I was not there. Just as I was thinking that it was a good thing I was in a private room because I would have been disturbed if others were there, I received another incoming call. Of course, it was from Ken. My mother answered for me. "Hey, hello. You finally picked up. Where are you?" His voice was so loud that even I could hear him clearly, even though I was not on speaker. "It's the hospital. She's hurt." "Huh? Today is the day my relatives get together, right? Don't skip it just because you're injured." My mother and I sounded a little alike. So he must have misunderstood me and yelled at me without even knowing it was my mother. "Hey, Jen. Are you listening to me? Come here quickly." "Ken, I'm Becky. I'm Jen's mother." "Oh, mother-in-law. Why are you?" He starts to panic when she tells him her name. He was very outgoing toward my mother and had never shown his husbandly side at all until now. "Is Jen around? Please take over. As I told you before, my daughter is injured. She is so badly injured that she can't even touch her cell phone. I can't help her because she's on a ventilator." The doctor explained that I was in a dangerous condition due to the trauma from the accident. All I could see now was my arm, but I was sure that the parts of my body hidden by my bedding and clothes were also badly injured. I also hit my head, so there is a bandage wrapped around it. I can't check my face without a mirror, but there is a tingling pain, so I am sure I am injured in several places. I'm hooked up to a ventilator and is unable to talk, let alone move. After the hospital called me, I thought I called you too. I wonder why you didn't pick up the whole time. No, I was at work. All night? You didn't even notice the call at all? You must have been working very hard." When she said this, Ken fell silent. I am sure he came home in the morning, as usual, and that's when he finally realized that no one was home. "Enough." He hung up the phone with a mumble, as if something was wrong. My mother put the smartphone down on the bed table. Her hands seemed to be shaking. Her eyes, which had been wet with tears earlier, were thirsty and burning with cold anger. "Doctor, how's my daughter?" "Yes, she is calm now." She said in the lowest tone I have ever heard in her voice, "I'm going to go say something," and went out somewhere. From this point on, my mother told me the rest of the story. His relatives were enjoying themselves without me, bringing in food and having a good time. Then my mother showed up. It seems that my mother and mother-in-law had exchanged contact information, and she explained the situation to them and asked them to open the front door. Since no one but my mother-in-law knew anything about it, they gave her a look, "What are you doing here?" Those who had never heard of my mother in the first place looked at the people around them as if puzzled as to who this person was. "My daughter Jen had an accident yesterday, and she finally woke up just now," she said in front of all the relatives, and they all looked at Ken at once. They questioned him as to why he was enjoying himself here when his own wife was in such a difficult situation. He had not expected my mother to show up, so he had his mouth opened. Of course, I had contacted Ken as of yesterday, but he didn't pick up the phone once. When I pressed the phone earlier, he said, "I was at work." "Were you really at work all night? You told me before that your work has been quiet lately. I thought your workload shouldn't be such that you have to work overtime until that late." A relative who is close to Ken's age voiced this. Ken glared at the relative. He must have been frustrated and impatient because he said, "Why are you saying this now?" "Ken, where were you really yesterday?" My mother did not ask. That's really true. In fact, for some time I had been asking my mother if Ken was having an affair. At first he seemed incredulous, partly because of his outward appearance. But when I told him that he was coming home late and that there were traces of a woman in his life, his expression became more and more grim. "That's suspicious. If Ken really was having an affair, what would you do? Divorce or rebuild?" I was hesitant to part with my son because he was still young, but then I thought back to what we had been doing. Ken has never done any housework or childcare. He acts as if he does not recognize his child, and I wonder if he cannot be called a father. If that is the case, maybe it is okay to leave him. I want to divorce Ken. I don't want to be treated as a housekeeper anymore. There's no point in being with someone who doesn't care about Alex, about our family. My mother nodded emphatically at my words. Thus, we began to gather evidence of the affair. It all came together, and after being convinced of the affair, my mother asked Ken where he had been. A picture of him with the woman with whom he was having an affair, taken by a detective. I also had correspondence with the woman in his email folder on his home computer. I knew that he had been sneaking around doing something, perhaps thinking that a message app on his cell phone would be more likely to be discovered. There were messages like, "Thanks again for meeting with me today." And "When can I see you next?" And "When can I see you next?" There were messages confirming plans, and passionate words like "I love you" or "I'm crazy about you." My mother would proudly show the printed copies of these messages in front of my relatives. He also revealed that he had been disrespecting me and treating me like a housekeeper until now. "Now you can't get away with this, can you?" Ken's face turned pale and his fists clenched tightly, and all the relatives hurled accusations at him. "How stupid. How dare you to cheat. Shame on you." At these words, Ken shrank more and more. But looking down all the time did not stop him from hearing words that were bad for him. "My mother is going to get even. I'm going to ask you to divorce my daughter." At these words, he looked up vigorously, as if he had been played. "Wait a minute. I didn't want a divorce. It was just a whim. Besides, just because your mother-in-law wants you to get a divorce, it's not Jen's own will." He leaned forward as if he might grab her. A relative held his shoulder. "What are you doing now? Don't be disgusting. Let go of me. I'm not satisfied unless I hear it from Jen herself. He cheated on her, forced her to take care of the housework, and deserved a divorce." My mother looked at Ken, who was out of control, coldly and put a piece of paper in front of him. It was a divorce papers with my signature on it. Yes, the man is right. Ken's behavior is terrible. I will never forgive you for hurting my precious daughter. At the look in her eyes, Ken froze. "As you can see from the letter, it is Jen's own will that she wants to divorce you. She has been discussing it with me for a long time." "Oh, no." While he was being restrained by relatives, my mother left the place. Then she returned to my hospital room. I looked at her anxiously, wondering what had happened, but she told me that everything was all right and told me what had happened. Later, the divorce was finalized. I didn't want to have anything to do with him anymore, and since I was too injured to move in the first place, I left it in the hands of my lawyer. I made sure to ask for child support, as well as alimony for the affair. And as it turned out during the investigation, the cheating partner was a person I knew named Emily. I would, of course, have the cheating partner, Emily, pay as well. Emily was a receptionist at a client company that Ken frequented. Incidentally, it was a different company from the one I worked for. While she was dealing with his visits to that company, she fell in love with him. The two exchanged contact information, developed a rapport through messages, and then secretly met outside the company. She thought that Ken's secrecy when they met was due to feelings of embarrassment or shyness. She did not know that he was married. One day, when Emily found out that Ken was married, she became angry and hateful toward me. As long as I am around, he cannot date openly. She cannot get married someday. Then let's erase it. She came up with such a horrible idea. She ambushed me in her car as I was coming out of the house, and when I think back about Emily, I feel angry and wonder why I had to go through this. Naturally, I am going to charge Emily plenty of alimony. Well, it doesn't stop there. I later heard that her anger did not stop with just hurling her anger at me. To my surprise, she stormed into Ken's company. She screamed his name and broke several pieces of equipment in her rampage. She was somehow subdued and taken away by the police officers who arrived at the scene as a result of the call. She would be severely punished, along with the fact that she had harmed me. Since she revealed to me that she had been having an affair, along with Ken's name, it became known within the company. Furthermore, she was fired when it was discovered that she had made several false business trips in order to have an affair. Ken no longer had a place to rely on. His relatives had disowned him. Since that gathering, he has lost contact with the in-laws as well as his relatives. He is currently missing. Even after the divorce was finalized, my parents-in-law and Sarah came to visit me. They were very kind to me, so I am a little relieved that they have not severed relations with me. I am so sorry. We just raised him to be that way. I'm really sorry, too. If only I had been more careful. He was the one to blame, so please don't apologize. I shook my head slowly, still unable to speak, to tell them this. The guilt still lingers in them, and I may only be able to smile awkwardly, but I hope we will be able to see each other again, smiling sincerely. Sarah and I intend to continue interacting with each other as friends. After that, I recovered well and was able to leave the hospital. I returned home to live with my parents and Alex. I would like to continue to live with all of them, while enjoying the happiness of watching my favorite son grow up with my favorite family. Kelly, I want a divorce. All right. No matter the reason, I can't live with someone who's been unfaithful. Let's get divorced right away. I printed out the divorce papers on my computer and thrust them in front of Tom. Sign this now. I'll sign it later and submit it right away. I'm sorry I hurt you. But thanks for understanding. We'll be happier this way. As Tom and Kelly were about to leave, Kelly came close and whispered to me, I'm gonna live the high life now. Sorry for taking Tom away from you. With that, Kelly showed a triumphant expression, linked arms with Tom, and they left. After all the paperwork was done, Kelly stretched out and said to me, It's finally over. Well, I guess it's all for the sake of happiness with Tom. So, good luck living the bean sprout life, Yvonne. Kelly laughed down at me with a triumphant look. I remained silent, and Tom, looking puzzled, joined in. Why does it mean Yvonne will be poor if she divorces me? Huh? Because, divorcing high earner Tom means Yvonne, a housewife, will lose her income, right? Hearing Kelly's words, Tom burst out laughing. What are you talking about? The poor life is gonna be ours, you know? My name is Yvonne. I'm a working housewife. My job is very busy, and I spend a lot of time away from home. Tom, my husband, supports me in this. He takes care of all the household chores in my stead, essentially being a full-time housewife. We've been married for just 3 months. Despite being newlyweds and me not being able to help much with the chores, Tom has never complained. He always takes care of me when I'm tired from work, and I'm truly grateful to him. We had no idea that the arrival of a certain person would greatly change the peaceful relationship we had cherished. One day, when I got home, Tom said to me, Can I invite an old friend over? Sure, but that's unusual for you to invite someone over. I met up with them after a long time recently. We really hit it off, and decided to meet again. I wanted you to meet them too. Tom explained with a smile. Seeing his face made me smile too. That's nice, thank you. If it's next weekend, I might be able to take the day off, so let me know the plan. Understood. Thanks, Yvonne, Tom said, looking pleased as he seemed to be sending a message on his smartphone right away. I've hardly ever seen Tom angry or in a bad mood. I love how kind and honest he is, always showing a carefree smile. Tom's childhood friend is named Kelly, and they'll be coming over next weekend since they're free. Tom thinks so highly of them, they must be a wonderful person. I was looking forward to meeting Kelly too. Next weekend. Today is the day Kelly visits our home. Tom has been cooking various dishes since morning to entertain his childhood friend. Tom's domestic skills are quite something, especially his cooking. Delicious-looking dishes are lined up on the table. I'm sure Kelly will be pleased. Ah, looks like Kelly's close by. I'm gonna go pick them up, Tom said and left the house to greet Kelly. Our house is in a high-rise condo with a concierge always stationed at the entrance. First-time visitors often get confused, so we make it a point to go down and welcome our guests. I wonder what they're like. Waiting excitedly, I heard the door open. Come in, please. Thank you for having me. Hearing Tom's conversation, I was puzzled. The voice seemed too high for a man. When Kelly entered the living room, I was surprised. Wow, what a room! This is so luxurious. In front of me was a woman looking around the room curiously. Tom, this person. Let me introduce you. This is my childhood friend, Kelly. Kelly, this is my wife, Yvonne. Nice to meet you, I'm Kelly. Nice to meet you too. I hastily returned the greeting. I had assumed a man would come because Tom's childhood friend was mentioned and Kelly is a unisex name. Tom could have just told me if Kelly was a woman. Feeling a bit uneasy, Tom and I decided to entertain Kelly. When we went to the dining table for the meal, Kelly naturally sat next to Tom. Normally, wouldn't Tom and I sit next to each other? I thought so, but Tom didn't seem to mind. It wasn't a formal occasion, and I didn't say anything as Kelly deliberately moved her chair closer to Tom. The house is amazing. The furniture is luxurious, and everything looks fantastic. Right? We can live like this thanks to Yvonne. Is that so? You support each other as a couple? Kelly looked up at Tom. Not once glancing my way, and I just watched them talk. Seeing Kelly touching Tom occasionally and chatting happily, I felt uncomfortable. Tom didn't seem to mind, but it was easy to guess that Kelly didn't just see him as a mere childhood friend. Trying not to spoil the mood, I kept quiet until Tom suddenly turned to me and said, "Fun, right?" He genuinely thought so. So I responded with a forced smile, "Yeah." Surely, Tom didn't realize how I felt. He must think I'm genuinely enjoying myself. Then, Kelly, who hadn't spoken to me at all until now, turned to me and said, "I'm really having a great time. Can I come over again?" Kelly's expression was smiling, but her eyes weren't. Seeing my vague response, Tom said with a smile, "I'm happy you two are getting along." After that, Kelly started visiting our house several times a week. Initially, she came on weekends when I was home, but gradually, the visits increased, and now she seems to come even when I'm at work. Today, I came home to find Kelly's shoes at the entrance. I sighed and went into the living room. There were Tom and Kelly, sitting close on the couch, laughing joyfully. Kelly's arm entwined with Tom's. Even after noticing my return, there was no effort to separate from each other. Already tired, this sight just drained me even more. "Welcome home, Yvonne." Tom greeted me with a smile upon noticing my return. Without addressing me, Kelly simply said, "Well, I'll be going then," and left the house. Kelly was here again? Isn't that too often lately? I asked with a sigh. While preparing dinner, Tom continued, "Yeah, that's true. But Kelly recently got divorced and moved back in with their parents. I guess they feel lonely since everyone around is busy with work or their own families. I feel sorry for her, but honestly, I don't feel comfortable with you two meeting up when I'm not around. It feels like the distance between you is too close, and I wish you'd refrain a bit." I'm sure Tom doesn't have any ill intentions. He purely wants to help a childhood friend in trouble. However, I couldn't feel good about Kelly, who would touch Tom casually even in front of his wife, or make herself at home in a married couple's house during the day. Hearing my request, Tom apologized and said he'd reduce the meetings with Kelly. All I could do was trust Tom's words at that moment. However, Kelly kept visiting our house. She seemed to choose the times I was at work, as I never encountered her face to face. So, how did I realize Kelly was visiting? It's because Kelly deliberately left the toilet paper folded in thirds like I see it's done at classy hotels. Knowing well that neither Tom nor I fold the paper like that. It was clear she was leaving a mark of her presence on purpose. It was obviously a provocation to me. Even though the visits had decreased, Kelly was still coming every week, prompting me to express my concerns to Tom again. I made it clear. But then she'd stand crying at the entrance, talking about how hard and sad she feels, and I just can't turn her away. Tom explained with regret. I couldn't blame him further and just asked him to keep requesting Kelly to refrain from visiting. Tom would apologize each time, but the situation didn't improve. A month had passed since Kelly's first visit, and she continued to come to our house, leaving me mentally exhausted. I wanted to find a way to stop Kelly's visits. With that in mind, I was headed to a place I normally wouldn't go alone. It was Tom's parents' house. I wondered if there had been interaction between the families, given they were childhood friends. I thought there might be a clue to a solution there. I pressed the doorbell of Tom's family home. But honestly, I wasn't keen on it. There's a reason I usually stay away from here. Oh, Yvonne. Are you alone? It's been a while. Hi, mother-in-law. The mother-in-law, opening the door and seeing me alone, clearly looked displeased. She is the reason. I am disliked by her. So? What brings you here all of a sudden? I don't really have any specific reason, but I haven't shown my face in a while, so I thought I'd stop by to say hello. Your visit doesn't make me happy at all. I could tolerate it if Tom were with you, but spending time on you alone is a waste. Being faced with such harsh words is almost refreshing in its clarity. Arguing back would only add fuel to the fire and make things worse. The best strategy is to offer a forced smile and let it slide. Really, you're such an uncharming daughter-in-law. It would have been nice to have someone like Kelly as my daughter-in-law. You two could have built a good relationship. I was surprised to hear Kelly's name come from the mother-in-law. Since she brought it up, it might be fortunate for me, considering I was worried about bringing up the subject awkwardly and arousing suspicion. She kept talking without paying much attention to me. Tom and Kelly have been close since they were young. Kelly always said she'd marry Tom. And then he ends up marrying someone like you, who can barely manage household chores, let alone care for the family. Truly disappointing. I'm sorry for my shortcomings. Without making excuses, I apologized. Yet, the mother-in-law continued to rant about me, repeatedly saying, Tom should have married Kelly. If Tom and Kelly were to marry, the mother-in-law would probably be overjoyed. With those thoughts, I absent-mindedly let her complaints wash over me. 2 months had passed since Kelly's first visit to our house, and the visits continued. By the time I became numb to the sight of the triple-folded toilet paper. Yvonne, there's something important I need to talk to you about. Tom approached me with a serious look, unlike his usual cheerful demeanor. The tense atmosphere made me nervous. HM? What's up? Are you free this weekend? I'd like to have a serious talk. I'm okay, but why not now? Yeah, I think the weekend would be better. All right then, I said, and then Tom left the living room. What could this important talk be about? I thought our relationship was good when it was just the two of us. Could it be about Kelly? I had a bad feeling about it. I felt a mix of wanting to get the conversation over with and not wanting the weekend to come. The weekend came. My fears seemed to be confirmed. Kelly was there, looking as if it was the most natural thing. Tom was the one who started the conversation. Yvonne, I want a divorce. I had somewhat anticipated this. I had hoped, despite the possibility of our marriage falling apart, that in the end, he would choose me. To think that just because of one woman, our marriage could end so abruptly, not even half a year into it. It felt like I had been hit in the head, everything spinning. I like being depended on. Knowing that you're busy with work and relying on me to take care of the housework, it made me feel like I was supporting you. I felt the same way. Breaking away from the stereotypes that men should work outside and women should take care of the house, I thought it would be best if we supported each other with what we're good at and enjoy. I thought I could do that with Tom. But this person can't do anything without me. She can't live without me. I need to support her. Tom must really believe that. Wanting to help someone in trouble and being the support they need is genuinely how he feels. Whether abandoning his wife to help someone else is right is questionable, though. Glancing at Kelly, she looked down, but not in a way that seemed remorseful. Someone truly sorry wouldn't sit back comfortably on a sofa and cross their legs. Most likely, Kelly must be looking down on me, thinking she finally managed to take Tom away. Not noticing this is perhaps one of Tom's flaws. Somehow, I started to feel foolish to be seriously worried about this. Tom's personality isn't going to change in the future. He might feel a bit guilty towards me, but his actions are driven by a spirit of helping others. If I consider it an act of service, I couldn't see myself severing ties with Kelly even if I didn't agree to the divorce now. Continuing a marital relationship with Tom seemed like a lifelong issue, and parting ways now appeared to be the quickest solution. All right. No matter the reason, I can't live with someone who's been unfaithful. Let's get divorced right away. I printed out the divorce papers on my computer and thrust them in front of Tom. Sign this now. I'll sign it later and submit it immediately. Tom seemed taken aback by my swift action, but he took the divorce papers and started filling them out right there. I'm sorry I hurt you. But thanks for understanding. We'll be happier this way. Saying that, Tom handed me the filled-out divorce papers. I silently accepted them. As Tom and Kelly were about to leave, Kelly came close and whispered to me. We're going to live in luxury from now on. Sorry for taking Tom away from you. With that, Kelly showed a triumphant expression, linked arms with Tom, and they left. It seems there's a big misunderstanding, but I no longer felt obligated to correct it. Regarding the divorce, I decided to hire a lawyer and go through settlement negotiations. Since we didn't have children, the discussions mainly needed to focus on property division. Today, Tom, Kelly, and I were supposed to meet at the lawyer's office to talk. Tom had declared that he would accept my terms. Kelly expressed dissatisfaction but was silenced by Tom, stating it was only fair since they had hurt me. I demanded a fair division of property rights and asked for alimony for their affair from both Tom and Kelly. Kelly looked displeased at the mention of alimony, but her expression softened a bit when she heard Tom would pay for both. After all the procedures were completed, Kelly stretched out and addressed me. Finally over. Well, it's all for the sake of happiness with Tom, right? Good luck living the Beans life, Yvonne. With a look of triumph, Kelly laughed down at me. I stayed silent, and then Tom, looking puzzled, joined in. What are you talking about? Beans, what do you mean? Because she is divorcing you, Tom, right? She'll have to live a poor life from now on. So, I thought it's sad she will only be able to afford beans for meals. Why does divorcing me mean Yvonne will be poor? Huh? Well, because she is divorcing you, a high earner, Yvonne, a housewife, will lose her income, right? Hearing Kelly's words, Tom was silent for a moment. And then, he suddenly bursted into laughter. What are you talking about? We're the ones who'll be living the poor life. Huh? Kelly looked at us with wide eyes, alternating her gaze between Tom and me. I decided not to join in on this. Tom, clutching his stomach, struggled to continue speaking. I told you Yvonne is a CEO. I never said I was the one working, right? I remember you saying that, but I thought it was a joke. Wait, was that true? Why would I lie about that? I'm the stay-at-home husband, and Yvonne has been supporting us. She's the CEO of the famous ABC company. Hearing the company name, Kelly turned sharply towards me. ABC company? The one that was in the news with a yearly revenue of $3 billion? You're joking, right? I'm honored you know of it. Let me reintroduce myself, I'm Yvonne, CEO of ABC company. I took out a business card and handed it to Kelly. Kelly slowly took the business card, looking stunned. The company name was clearly written on the card. Kelly's hands were trembling slightly. Why? Your mother said Tom was the elite earner, how could this be? Hearing this, Tom looked just as surprised. While thinking that Kelly and the mother-in-law must have been in cahoots, I quietly listened to their conversation. Why did Mom get such a misunderstanding? You told her about it, right? Well, your mother said it's unthinkable for a woman to earn money. She also said that a woman should do all the housework and that failing to fulfill the duties of a wife is the worst, among other things. What? That's ridiculous. Such thinking is outdated nowadays. Sighing, Tom seemed frustrated by his mother's views. But I chose you over Yvonne. It's not for the money, but for love, you understand, right? Tom spoke with a smile while looking at Kelly, who remained dazed, not even sure if she was listening. Can we call it a day with this discussion? You've agreed to the terms, right? Yeah. This concludes the proceedings, right? I feel bad for hurting Yvonne. I'll make sure not to interfere anymore. Yeah. Please do. And tell that person in shock over there, and your mother as well, not to involve themselves with me anymore. All right, we're going to head out now. Tom supported a completely drained Kelly and left the lawyer's office. To think someone would be so shocked to discover their gold-digging target was actually a stay-at-home spouse. Whether they can build a good relationship going forward is highly doubtful. But that's no longer my concern. Finally freed from the hassle, I felt a weight lifted off my shoulders. One day, after returning to single life and enjoying my freedom despite a busy work schedule, my secretary reported that a woman was causing a scene at the entrance, demanding to see me. It didn't seem like she was related to work, and she was insistent on seeing the president despite attempts to communicate with her. Despite a bad feeling, I instructed my secretary to bring the person to the reception room and asked her to be present with me. As expected, Kelly was there. She looked frantic and out of sorts. I regretted giving her my business card the other day. Why have you come to the company all of a sudden? Don't you realize causing a commotion at the entrance is a nuisance? Well, I don't know your contact details. I tried going to your house, but the concierge at the entrance wouldn't let me in, so I had no choice but to come here. We finished our discussion during the last settlement negotiation, didn't we? I never wanted to see you again. It's not like I wanted to come here either. Kelly banged on the table. My secretary looked displeased, but I gestured for her to stay calm. That's right. I came here to complain to you. Complain? Yes. You talked about property division, but what's with that amount? For the CEO of such a big company, you're being stingy. Kelly ranted on, clearly under a lot of stress. I'm not being stingy, it's a fair amount. Lies. It's true. It didn't seem like she would back down easily. Despite finding the situation bothersome, I decided to explain things to her. In the first place, my marriage with Tom lasted only 6 months. During that time, my income was evenly split. So, considering the compensation paid by Tom and you, it's natural for the total amount received to be less than the proposed figure, isn't it? Upon hearing about compensation, Kelly was taken aback. Tom had paid compensation for both of them. Realizing the reason why tens of thousands of dollars had disappeared, Kelly's expression turned bitter. Even so, why can't we live in that luxury condo? The house and all the furniture inside are shared property between spouses, right? It's unfair for you to hog everything. Dealing with Kelly's persistent questioning was becoming tiresome for me. With averted eyes, I explained calmly. Come to think of it, when you first came to the house, you looked around so rudely. If they were purchased after marriage, then yes, as you said, they would be considered shared property between spouses. What do you mean? That luxury condo and all the furniture inside were bought by me when I was single. So, they're all mine. There's absolutely no chance for you to live there. Confronted with the blunt reality, Kelly couldn't hide her shock. Uttering her words in a subdued voice, I can't believe it. I thought if I married Tom, I could have all the wealth, the luxury condo, and the gorgeous furniture. Well, sorry to burst your bubble. But you did get a kind and skilled husband who handles household chores. Be satisfied with that. Yes, that's it. That's the problem. Hearing my words, Kelly's voice rose as if she had come to her senses. What's the problem? Tom told me to get a job. He said he's suited to being a stay-at-home spouse, so I should work and earn money. I thought I could live comfortably without working after marrying Tom. It's natural for one partner to work if the other stays at home and does household chores. While Kelly was Kelly in this matter, Tom couldn't be blamed even if he complained. The reason he could stay at home as a house husband was because of his life with me, who wanted to work outside. If the spouse of a woman who likes to work marries someone like Tom, who takes care of household chores, it's a great match. I've always lived with my parents and never worked properly. I'm doing part-time jobs now, but I can't earn a stable income because I can't become a full-time employee. Tom doesn't get mad at me for that. But when it comes to my housekeeping skills, he says I can easily make frugal meals, and let's try to save money together as a couple. He's too positive, and it's annoying. Sure, there might be some troublesome aspects to it. Being able to take everything positively can be considered one of Tom's strengths, but his inability to read the room and the irritation it causes did happen. Even if we have to live on beans, as long as we're together, it's all good, right? I've got cooking skills, so I can make bean dishes every day without getting tired of them. He'd say. I was pleased thinking you'd struggle with eating only beans, but if I knew it would come to this, I wouldn't have married Tom. I don't need a man like that, take him back. It's likely just frustration at not being able to live the lavish life she imagined. Forced into a poor lifestyle, with a nice but financially unreliable husband. Thinking only of herself has led her to this backlash. Even though it's all her fault, she can't settle down without taking it out on someone else, maybe me. However, I didn't care about that anymore. I don't care about your feelings, and I don't need a cheating man either, regardless of the reason. Is that all you wanted to talk about? Then, please leave. As I said this, my secretary didn't wait for Kelly's response and promptly called security to escort Kelly out. I could hear her causing a scene in the hallway, but her voice gradually faded away. Feeling reassured by my secretary's decision to instruct the security to turn away that woman if they saw her, I sighed deeply. I've had enough of trouble. Then, one day, after Kelly's assault had ceased and I was enjoying my work peacefully, I was about to leave the office without working late when someone suddenly grabbed my arm. Startled, I couldn't make a sound and looked over in fear, only to find my mother-in-law glaring at me with rage. You finally came out. I've been waiting for hours, and you never showed up. How dare you not let your mother-in-law into your home and send her away? What kind of nerve do you have? Following Kelly, now it was my mother-in-law's turn to show up. I had forgotten about another troublesome person. The thought of her waiting for me to leave work filled me with an eerie sense of dread. Careful not to show my feelings, I responded firmly. I'm divorced from Tom now, so we're strangers. It makes no sense to let unrelated people into my home. I've informed the condo to only allow people I've approved into the entrance. You're so insolent. Respect your elders. My mother-in-law screamed in a pitch I had never heard before. It caused me discomfort. If there was anything about you worth respecting, I would. What do you want, ambushing me like this? Ambush sounds so terrible. I came all this way to tell you something important. I didn't ask for it. I wanted to run away from this situation right then, but fearing another ambush. I decided to listen to what my mother-in-law had to say, intending to end it all today. First of all, why didn't you honestly say that Tom wasn't working? It's your fault I was deceived, and now I'm in a terrible situation. I told you many times. I was the one working, and Tom was taking care of the home. Each time, you called me a liar or just ignored what I said. Blaming me for her own misunderstandings is frustrating. Then, you should have made sure I understood. I started living with Tom thinking we'd have a luxurious life, but the house isn't a high-rise condo, and it's bean sprouts every day. I can't stand it anymore. So, you were after the money as well. Like Kelly, you suffer because you rely on others for money. Shut up. Anyway, I'm in this mess because of you. You should pay my living expenses for life. That's ridiculous. That's not going to happen. Besides, shouldn't father-in-law be working? Even if Tom and Kelly lack the means, you should be able to get by for now, right? Yes, my father-in-law has been working away from home for years and rarely returns to his family home. Yet, he has always been very kind to me on the few occasions we met. Dealing with my mother-in-law's nagging was a hassle, but thanks to my father-in-law, I could tolerate visiting their home. That is, my mother-in-law gave a hesitant response. When he came back and found out about Tom's remarriage, he divorced me. I was kicked out of the house, so I decided to live with Tom and his new family. Finding your son's wife changed upon returning home would naturally lead to questions. It's typical of my mother-in-law. She probably spoke ill of me, making my father-in-law uncomfortable. But I thought, even after separating from him, living lavishly was possible because Tom was wealthy. I made a bold statement, so now I can't even ask him for help. I'm truly stunned. My father-in-law was a caring person who treated me kindly. If you had responded to his feelings, I am sure he would have reached out to you. But this is your own fault for neglecting the people around you. I will never help you. My mother-in-law, initially somewhat subdued, became furious again when I refused any assistance. How terrible! Heartless! To think I've come to you for help. Say what you will. If you continue to make a scene, I'll call the police. It's a nuisance having you cause such a disturbance in front of my company. Hearing the word police, my mother-in-law's face paled. She bit her lip in frustration but left without saying another word. Her shoulders were slumped, carrying the weight of despair. According to my lawyer, Tom, Kelly, and my mother-in-law are still living together. Tom wanted to continue being a stay-at-home spouse, but realizing they couldn't cover the expenses for 3 people, he decided to start looking for a job. However, not having worked for several months for reasons other than recuperation or caregiving, Tom could only find an employment at a company with low wages. In the end, Tom's salary alone was not enough to support their living, and both Kelly and my mother-in-law had to take up part-time jobs to scrape by. When Tom was taking care of the household, everything was spotless, and homemade meals were served daily, but now, with everyone occupied with work, the house is a mess. Meals consist solely of ready-made food, and arguments have increased. On the other hand, I was living a carefree life. If I wanted my house clean, I could hire a house cleaning service, and there are plenty of delicious options for food delivery or dining out. Not to say I dislike cooking. Occasionally, I find it a nice change of pace. I was thoroughly enjoying my single life. As for work, a company I recently started doing business with turned out to be where my father-in-law works, allowing me to reconnect with him. Yvonne, I'm truly sorry. It's all because of my foolish wife and son that you were hurt. No amount of apologies can make up for it. My father-in-law apologized to me, but there was nothing wrong on his part in this whole situation. Please don't apologize. Although we're no longer family, I would be happy if we could maintain a good relationship moving forward. When I conveyed this, my father-in-law smiled slightly and said, "Thank you. For now, I've had enough of romance. I've decided to dedicate myself fully to my work." Hey, let's do something special for Grandpa's birthday. Great idea. Let's make his favorite beef stew and celebrate together. I smiled warmly, agreeing with my grandson Adrian's suggestion. Over the next few days, in preparation for my husband Henry's birthday next week, Adrian was learning how to make beef stew under my guidance. Adrian, who had never really cooked before, held the knife clumsily, and I had to resist the urge to help him, but I continued to watch over him diligently. It's amazing how quickly children grow. In just a few days, Adrian could cut the ingredients to the right size with a knife. Finally, the long-awaited day of Henry's birthday arrived. After spending a long time cooking, I asked Henry to taste the stew, and he took a bite with a happy expression. He tilted his head slightly, then suddenly stood up with the stew and headed to the bathroom. I frowned, puzzled, as I watched his retreating back. After a while, when Henry returned, I said with a slightly irritated tone, "Henry, we spent 5 hours making that beef stew. Why did you pour it down the sink?" My words came out a bit petulantly, but I was genuinely upset. Even if he was dissatisfied with the taste, was there really a need to throw it away? I could have adjusted the flavor, there had to be a way to fix it. Henry looked at me in surprise. "Did you eat this, Julie?" "No, I haven't." Adrian quietly walked up to Henry and whispered in a very small voice, "Thank you, Grandpa." I was completely lost for words, when Henry smiled softly and gave a small bow. "My name is Julie, I'm 54 years old. I live with my kind but slightly timid husband, Henry, and a kitten we recently adopted. I run a local beauty salon inherited from my parents. Thanks to its prime location, the salon is thriving, supported by the local community. The salon also serves as our home. We use the first floor for the salon and live on the second floor. While I work, I sometimes feel bad for leaving the kitten in its cage all day due to the faint noises from upstairs. A few days after getting the kitten, I decided to let it roam freely in the living room. Whenever I went upstairs to check on it between appointments, I was always surprised by its unexpected behaviors, like knocking over vases or chewing on clothes. As a hairdresser, I pride myself on always greeting customers with a smile and meeting their hair needs with my skills. This has led to my salon becoming well known through word of mouth, attracting new customers. Of course, I regularly attend seminars and training to improve my skills as a hairstylist. While I focus on my work, I also cherish the time I spend with my family. Henry and I have been married without major conflicts, supporting and understanding each other throughout our marriage. Perhaps because Henry is 2 years older, I tend to rely on him quite a bit. Although I'm confident in my hairdressing skills, I struggle with managing inventory, like shampoo, and have left that up to Henry. He handles appointments more efficiently, and his efforts have enabled online booking, which has helped attract new clients. Henry is very kind and timid. When I fell in love with a kitten at the pet shop and begged to keep it, he reluctantly agreed. Even though he's not fond of animals. I'm not really good with animals. He keeps his distance from the kitten. But since it's now part of the family, I figured he would eventually grow to love it. I spontaneously named the kitten Anna. In the neighborhood, my son, now named Tom, his wife Sophia, and their son Adrian live happily together. Adrian is my treasure. The young boy is very attached to me, often pleading, "I want to spend more time with Grandma." This has sometimes made my relationship with Sophia challenging. Adrian asks me for a haircut once a month. When I suggested, "How about asking Mom to cut it for you?" Adrian replied with an innocent smile, loud enough for nearby Sophia to hear, "Because Grandma is better at it." Sophia smiled too, but her eyes were not laughing. After finishing Adrian's haircut, she seemed somewhat dissatisfied and murmured, "It's indeed good. I just wanted to enjoy my time with my adorable grandson, but if it meant hurting my daughter-in-law's pride, I thought I'd rather not cut Adrian's hair anymore." However, Adrian became even more attached to me, wanting to see me more. Sophia and Tom, both working busy jobs, likely contributed to the increased days I took care of Adrian. I temporarily closed my salon to cherish my moments with Adrian, taking him for walks and to the park. Yet, I was concerned about Sophia's attitude in my heart. Though she never said it out loud, I could tell she was clearly displeased whenever Adrian and I did something together. One day, I decided to address the issue with Sophia directly. "Sophia, since we're both hairstylists, there might be a sort of rivalry, right? But we're family, so how about we try to get along better?" Sophia looked surprised at first, but then smiled and said, "I'll think about it. Getting along with Julie might be good for Tom and Adrian." I was relieved by Sophia's words. I still don't know what will happen between Sophia and me in the future, but I resolved to continue valuing our family bond. Hoping for more moments of laughter and play with Adrian, I went on with my busy days. One day, Tom's family came to visit my house. Tom and Adrian were playing with Anna, our playful kitten, using a toy similar to a cat teaser. I was writing in the cat care diary I've kept since the day we brought Anna home, sitting beside them. Suddenly, I remembered next Sunday would be Henry's birthday and called Adrian over. "Hey, how about we do something special for Grandpa's birthday? Maybe we can throw a different kind of fun party." Adrian, a bit puzzled but with sparkling eyes, looked at me. "Great idea! Let's make Grandpa's favorite beef stew and celebrate with everyone." I smiled warmly, agreeing with Adrian's proposal. For the next few days, Adrian learned how to make beef stew under my guidance. I decided to let Adrian do all the work, like chopping and frying, while I just gave verbal instructions. Adrian, who had apparently never cooked before, held the knife awkwardly, making me want to intervene, but I kept watching over him. Children grow so fast, and in just a few days, Adrian could cut ingredients to a decent size with a knife. Finally, the much-awaited day of Henry's birthday arrived. I sent Henry out to go play somewhere until the evening, meanwhile inviting Tom's family over. I asked Adrian if he could handle making the stew, and Sophia, standing next to him, smiled and hugged his shoulders. Actually, he's been eating stew almost every day, getting really into making it. Today, he plans to cook it for a long time to bring out a deep flavor. Oh, that's authentic! It takes a long time to keep stirring the pot to prevent burning, so I'll stand in the kitchen with Adrian. Julie, could you handle the decorations and picking up the cake? I nodded deeply, thinking it was a clear division of tasks. I expressed my gratitude with a smile and left the stew to Adrian and Sophia. While I went out for decorations and cake pickup, I returned to a house filled with the aroma of stew. It smelled delicious. Happy, I headed to the kitchen to find Adrian staring at the stew pot alone. I instantly felt something was off with Adrian's face. He looked tense, staring at the stew, and it seemed like tears were welling up in his eyes. Adrian, what's wrong? Are you okay? After hesitating and mumbling for a while, Adrian finally burst into tears. Grandma, I messed up the beef stew. I was surprised, but placed my hand on Adrian's cheek. It's okay, Adrian. Everyone messes up cooking sometimes. What's important is celebrating Grandpa's birthday with all our hearts. But, Grandma, the stew probably tastes bad. I'm sorry. I want something else today. What are you talking about? It might not be a failure. How about this? Let's have Grandpa taste it, and if it's good, we'll all eat. How's that? Adrian looked on the verge of tears at my suggestion. What a sensitive child. But the stew didn't look burnt, and the ingredients were cut to the right size. What could be wrong with this stew? Well, if Henry tastes it, surely Adrian will be convinced. As the sky began to turn red, Henry came home. At the same time, Adrian and I had Henry sit down to explain what had happened. So, if I taste it and it's good, we'll all eat it, right? Henry took a bite of the stew with a happy expression. Then tilted his head slightly. Suddenly, he stood up with the stew and headed straight for the bathroom. I frowned in confusion as I watched his retreating back. After a while, when Henry came back, I said with a slightly irritated expression. Henry, that stew took 5 hours to make. Why did you pour it down the sink? I sounded a bit petulant, but I was genuinely angry. Regardless of whether he was dissatisfied with the taste, was there really a need to throw it away? We could have added more roux to adjust the flavor, there had to be a way to fix it. Henry looked at me in surprise. Did you eat this, Julie? No, I haven't. Quietly, Adrian walked up to Henry and whispered in a really small voice, "Thank you, Grandpa." As I became thoroughly confused and fell silent, Henry made a gentle smile and nodded. Sorry. It turns out the stew had nuts in it. Julie's allergic, so I thought I better be careful. Hearing that, my expression froze for a moment. I have a severe nut allergy and need to be particularly cautious with food. Adrian mentioned he messed up the stew, but I hadn't tasted it myself because of my allergy. I've always been extremely cautious about nuts, not eating anything unless I'm absolutely certain it doesn't contain nuts. It's become a habit, unconsciously being careful about food others have made, regardless of it being made by family. Usually, when Henry and I eat out, he checks for nuts, not exactly as a taster, but to ensure my safety. After a bad experience with incorrect information from a restaurant staff, he's always been the one to taste first if there's any uncertainty about nuts. My nut allergy is that serious. Known well by Tom and Sophia. With mixed feelings of surprise and anger, I said, I've mentioned my nut allergy often, haven't I? Why were there nuts in it? I wasn't really addressing anyone in particular, but Sophia, who was nearby, spoke up. Looking a bit flustered, she bowed slightly and said, I'm sorry, Julie. Maybe Adrian accidentally added the nuts. Adrian did? He loves nuts, so probably he didn't know about your allergy and added them. Sophia said gently, hugging Adrian's shoulder. It was news to me that Adrian liked nuts. I had never told him about my allergy, though I had mentioned that I dislike nuts, recalling a time we laughed about both of us not liking nuts.
But I told Adrian that I dislike nuts.
Julie? Adrian loves nuts. It can't be helped.
It's good that it didn't turn into a major accident,
Sophia said, leaving me staring at her, bewildered and surprised. Adrian was looking down. A mix of sadness and apology on his face. Confused by Adrian's reaction, I was trying to figure out what was happening. I might be missing some crucial facts. Sensing the uneasy atmosphere, Tom suggested, "Let's discuss this another day, shall we? After all, today is Henry's birthday. We wouldn't want to spoil the fun, right?" Tom said in a tone that seemed to treat everyone like children. Then Henry, stroking his chin, suggested, "Let's check the surveillance camera." Sophia, surprised, uttered, "What?" I didn't miss the way Sophia's face turned pale at Henry's mention of checking the camera we recently installed for the cat. I usually only turn it on while I'm working at the salon, but today I left it on by accident, Henry muttered to himself.
"No, Henry, we'll make sure Adrian learns from his mistake about accidentally adding the nuts. There's no need to play back the camera. It's my way of apologizing for throwing away the stew that took hours to make. I at least want to see the effort Adrian put into cooking it."
Henry said this with a gentle smile, but his eyes were not smiling at all. He took the camera set up for the cat and inserted it into the computer connected to the TV to start playback. From the camera mounted above the refrigerator, the scene of cooking in the kitchen was clearly displayed. This camera also has the capability to record audio, and the footage showed Sophia and Adrian talking while simmering the stew. Sophia, looking around restlessly, suggested, "Come on, if there's no food, let's just go out to eat." But Henry, ignoring her words, turned up the volume of the playback. Amid the static, Sophia's and Adrian's conversation could be heard. Sophia, in a rather commanding tone, was seen handing nuts to Adrian, urging him to hurry up. Adrian refused, shaking his head and pushing the nuts back towards Sophia's chest. Then, Sophia slapped Adrian across the cheek. Adrian fell to the ground, and in the silence that followed, Sophia was seen finally chopping the nuts on the cutting board. Humming a tune, she said, "I'll cook it long enough so that old lady won't notice," as she continued to crush the nuts into a finer powder with an evil smirk. Adrian, with tears in his voice, pleaded, "Let's stop. Grandma might suffer," but Sophia looked down at him with a very cold expression.
"If you tell anyone, Mommy will get arrested. You okay with that?"
"I don't want that."
"It's okay. I just want to play a little trick on Julie. It's our secret," Sophia whispered, winking and pointing her index finger to her lips, as she proceeded to add the crushed nuts to the stew pot. Fully aware of the severe allergic reaction I could have. Henry and I were deeply shocked as we watched, until Tom, sounding a bit frightened, asked, "Why would you do something like this?" Realizing everything was exposed, Sophia gave up on pretending and crossed her arms with a pout, saying, "Julie has it so good. She owns her salon, works freely, and never struggles with conversation since it's all regular customers." We exchanged looks, wondering what she was talking about. Sophia began to complain about her job at the salon, mentioning the long hours of standing, insufficient breaks, and how the store's policy of prioritizing customers' appointments over staff holidays meant she couldn't take proper paid leave. Despite that, Julie's salon frequently closes for her to go for walks or shopping with Adrian. At first, I was grateful, but then it just made me increasingly angry. "So you tampered with the stew by adding nuts, just to cause Julie distress. And you even cooked it for 5 hours to ensure the taste wouldn't be detected." Even Henry, usually quiet and gentle, began to speak more sternly. If I had ingested the nuts, a small amount might just cause swelling in my mouth or lips, but eating too much could lead to anaphylaxis. Having been cautious about my allergies since childhood, I've never had severe symptoms, but in hindsight, it seems Henry was more concerned about my diet than I was. "So, you were planning to blame Adrian if I ate the stew and ended up in danger, weren't you, Sophia?" Henry's calm explanation made everyone aware of the gravity of Sophia's actions. Tom was the first to deeply apologize to me, shouting at Sophia to do the same. However, Henry, without changing his expression, took out his phone and quietly said, "I'm calling the police." The moment the word police was mentioned, Sophia's face turned pale, her eyes widening in shock. The disbelief of just for putting nuts in the stew was written all over her face. Tom tried to stop Henry, but Henry, usually seen with a gentle smile, sternly refused. "This is a crime that could have led to a serious accident. I want the police to handle it appropriately." After calling the police, I held Adrian for a while, comforting him as he seemed to regret not resisting more. Adrian's small body was trembling. In such moments, not knowing what to say, all I could do was continue to hold my grandson close. Turning to Sophia, who still seemed unconvinced, I began. "You know, what saddens me the most isn't the danger I was put in, but the fact you tried to blame a child, Adrian, and attempted to destroy the life we have as a family." Sophia remained silent, staring off into the distance. Now exposed, she looked at me with eyes that had resigned to her fate, cold and defeated. "All this fuss about allergies. It's overblown. Nuts are subtly included in various dishes. Do we have to be so cautious about nuts in everything we make here? Yes, it's not an exaggeration. I've been cautious about what I eat since I was a child. How tedious. It's just a rash or something minor, right?" As Sophia reapplied her lipstick, Anna, the kitten, came from the next room and suddenly started climbing up her dress towards her neck, claws out. "What's this?" Sophia screamed in pain from Anna's tiny claws, standing still without resistance. It seemed Anna was intrigued by her necklace. As Anna reached her neck, clinging desperately to Sophia, she sneezed loudly. Anna, shocked but determined not to be shaken off, dug her claws in further. The sneezing continued, and Sophia, struggling to breathe, tried to peel Anna off, but only stretched her clothes as Anna's claws were tangled. When Tom picked Anna up, Sophia sat down, coughing violently. Tears in her eyes, she held her chest, trying to catch her breath, while looking at Anna. I rubbed her back gently and asked, "Are you okay?" She nodded after taking a few deep breaths. "I think it's a cat allergy. It's similar to hay fever symptoms, but have you ever experienced this before?" Sophia shook her head slightly, covering her nose as she left the room. After washing her face in the bathroom, she returned, glaring at Anna while drying her face with a towel. Henry picked up Anna, gently stroking her head. I realized I had never seen Henry holding Anna before. Despite her small and cute appearance, Henry seemed afraid of Anna, but now he held her close to his chest as if she were a precious baby. Allergies can vary in severity, but for the person affected, it can be very painful and difficult. Even if it was a light-hearted decision to add nuts, I want you to understand the gravity of your actions. Sophia continued to cough occasionally. Soon, 2 police officers arrived at our home to mediate the situation. The discussion turned to what actions I sought from Sophia, knowing that adding nuts to the stew when aware of an allergy could constitute a specific crime. Sophia is an important part of my family, being my son's wife. I didn't want to escalate things unnecessarily, but expressed a sincere desire for her to reflect on her actions properly. The senior officer spoke very calmly, and Sophia, looking worn out, began to reveal her actions and feelings up to now. It became clear that she had been trying to harm me through Adrian and had been harsh towards him when he resisted. For Tom, hearing this was a shocking revelation, and a few months after the incident, he initiated a divorce. Tom said wistfully, "I dreamed of running a salon together like you and Dad," which deeply moved me. A year has passed since then. I chose not to pursue criminal charges or a lawsuit regarding the nuts in the stew. However, word spread quickly, and Sophia could no longer live in the neighborhood, resorting to moving back in with her parents. I hold no resentment or anger towards Sophia, rather, I worry about her and occasionally reach out via text, asking if she's okay or needs anything, despite it possibly being seen as meddling. For months, there was no response until one day, I received a simple message from her saying, "I'm sorry."
She seems to be reflecting and trying to grow from this experience, and I truly want to forgive her. Since then, my husband and I have welcomed Tom and Adrian to live with us in this house. Henry has become even more vigilant about what I eat since the beef stew nuts incident, and I feel incredibly fortunate to have such a caring partner. We try to create many happy memories for Adrian, who went through a tough experience, by going out together. While I am grateful for my successful work life, I strive to further improve myself, holding even more confidence in my abilities. Anna has grown too big to be called a kitten anymore, stretching out under the table in the living room, asleep. Usually purring contentedly, Anna approaches me when I'm about to eat, sniffing the ingredients as if checking them out, then walks away after a while. I don't think there's a deeper meaning to Anna's actions, but it makes me feel as though I'm protected by many beings around me, filling me with a sense of happiness today as well. My name is Mia Williams. I've been married for 25 years. My husband is a struggling comic book artist, with next to no income. Still, he manages to make a little pocket money by drawing small illustrations, but the payments are deposited into an account under his name, which I manage. Because of this, he boasts, I'm the one supporting the family. But the reality is the complete opposite. It's actually me, a nurse, who's supporting us. This has made our life difficult, but my husband doesn't understand it at all. We somehow managed to get our son through college, and now that he's working, he's finally starting to contribute a bit to the household, giving us a much-needed break. I was thinking that now, without the major expense of tuition, we could even travel together as a couple. That's when it happened. My husband came out with something unbelievable. I want to support my mistress who's suffering from cancer and my lonely, illegitimate child. When he suddenly said this, I thought it was a new story for his comic. Oh, a mistress and an illegitimate child suffering from cancer, huh? It's a bit cliché, but it could be interesting depending on the development. I'm serious. At your age, aiming for a newcomer's award? But you're technically a pro since you're getting paid, so that's not gonna happen, right? What are you talking about? This isn't about a comic. My husband was insisting it was the truth, desperately. His desperation slowly made me wonder, and I began to think this might actually be an admission of an affair. So, you're saying you've been cheating, right? No mistake? Yeah, no mistake, but it's not cheating. If it's not cheating, then what is it? It's serious. My husband, nostrils flaring, insisted it was serious. Whether it's cheating or serious, to me, his wife, it's undoubtedly a betrayal. Did you say illegitimate child? Yeah, an illegitimate child. So, you're saying it's your kid, right? Exactly. And how old is this child? 5 years old. So, this has been going on for 6 years? No, 8 years. 8 years ago. My mind started racing. That was when our son was 16. He had been cheating since then, spinning around like a top between here and there. And you had no clue. How can he say that so proudly? Right, back then, our son was going through his rebellious phase. And you were often away from home, coming up with excuses like looking for comic book ideas or going on trips with friends. Yeah, that's right. So, I've been deceived for 8 years? Well, yeah, that's about it. My husband always chased his dreams, claiming he had no interest in anything but comics. He was so determined to become a successful comic book artist. But years passed, and success never came, nor did our financial situation improve. When we were younger, he would apologize, saying, "Since you're working outside, I'll take care of the house." He did everything: cooking, cleaning, laundry. When we had our child, taking him to daycare and caring for him when he was sick became my husband's job. I never had to take a day off work. Thanks to that, we've made it this far, and I wasn't as pressed for time as other nurses. But as our son hit his rebellious phase and turned his frustrations towards my husband, he began to escape more frequently outside. That's when he started throwing harsh words at me. "You're lucky, being working all the time. You don't have to worry about our son's rebellious phase." But if I hadn't worked? Yeah, I'm sorry. My income is so low.
But remember, I'm the one feeding you all. Don't forget that, no matter how much you work. What? Despite never having earned enough to support us. And I had kept quiet to protect his pride, worried that confronting him would crush his spirit and he'd lose the motivation to work. What do you think you are? Marrying you was a real mistake. I've never once eaten a home-cooked meal from you. Every other wife cooks. But that's because... I had my reply. He said he'd handle everything himself because he wanted me to focus on my job. That's why he said it. Whenever I tried to do anything around the house, he'd tell me it wasn't necessary. Yet now, to bring this up, I was both surprised and saddened. All you talk about is work, but nursing isn't that big a deal, is it? Just follow the doctor's orders and have a chat with patients. Can you even call that work? Those words really got to me. The person who should understand most how demanding and nerve-wracking being a nurse can be, didn't get it at all. Since then, every time he saw my face, he would complain. He showered me with insults. And he hardly ever stayed home. The frequency of calls from our son saying, "Dad's not coming home," increased, and there was even a time when even our son stopped coming home. Somehow he made it to college, but the situation didn't change and I felt left alone in the house. And now, to realize all this was because of an affair. So, you were saying all those terrible things to me because you had a mistress? What are you talking about? I've been told quite a few terrible things. I just said what I was thinking. I don't recall saying anything terrible. He didn't even realize he was hurting me. Fine, let's get a divorce. He put the divorce papers in front of me. Was this his way of showing he was serious, having prepared something like this? Why had I been so desperate to support a life with this man? And to think, I even harbored a faint hope that maybe, just maybe, we could return to how things were if we went on a trip together as a couple. How foolish I was. Can you at least tell me her name? What? I think I have the right to know who she is. What are you gonna do with that information? She's sick. What do you plan to do? Go there and do what? He yelled as if screaming, trying to protect her. On the contrary, he saw me as nothing but a threat. What a situation. The shock was immense, and he was no longer a man I wanted to keep by my side. I can live on my own, and our son is now settled. I don't need this man to live. I don't intend to harm your girlfriend. I just thought I had the right to know her name. But it's fine, I'll give you the divorce. In return, I'm keeping the house. Fine, do whatever you want. I'm going to live with her, so I don't need this house. He must have thought he won because I backed down. Puffing out his chest, my husband declared he didn't need the house. After signing the divorce papers, I handed them to him. We're strangers now. Yeah, well, I guess you won't remarry, but find someone good and be happy. As if he meant that. Such hollow words. When he left, I didn't cry, I just laid my head down on the table. I wished sleep would take me, but my mind was too alert to rest. What were these 25 years all about? As the room darkened and night fell, my son came home. Thinking no one was there due to the darkness, he was surprised when he turned on the light. Mom, are you okay? Hey. What happened? Did something happen? As he rummaged in the fridge for a drink, I told him about the separation from his father. He turned around, surprised at first, but then he spoke quite lightly. So, I see. Well, that guy was just like that. Now that the burden's gone, isn't it better? Oh, so he was our burden. But the shock of divorce wasn't something that could be easily dismissed. He didn't even tell me the woman's name. Do you want to know? It'd be nice to know, but it's not like I'm going to do anything with that information. If it'll make you feel better, I'll find out for you. Saying this, my son patted my back, trying to cheer me up. Having been down for a while, I decided not to let this break me and to focus solely on work. Lost things don't return, and they weren't worth mourning over. That's what I convinced myself. I threw myself into work more than ever, gradually recovering from the shock. 3 months passed, and my emotions stabilized.
My role as a nurse, which had supported me, inspired a new determination to support my patients. One day, as I was walking through the hospital, a patient in a wheelchair called out to me. Turning around, I saw a patient wrapped in bandages, looking almost like a mummy. Unable to move the wheelchair themselves, followed by a new nurse.
Mia! You're Mia, right? Please, help me! Take care of me!
Questions flew through my mind. It was impossible for a patient to know me by name in this hospital.
You're a surgery patient, aren't you?
Then, the new nurse informed me that he was Daniel Williams. Daniel Williams was the name of my husband from whom I separated 3 months ago. I was speechless at his drastically changed appearance, but since he said he was headed back to his room, I decided to take over pushing his wheelchair. Daniel squinted happily as we moved outside. I decided to take over pushing his wheelchair and we moved outside. Knowing that the courtyard would be deserted, I asked him there. How did this happen to you?
Well, it was an accident.
And your mistress?
I kicked her to the curb myself.
Despite Daniel saying this with such arrogance, he wasn't strong enough to have ended things under these circumstances.
So, you're the one who ended it?
Yeah, exactly.
Even with an illegitimate child involved?
Yeah, for all I know, that child might not even be mine.
How things have changed in just 3 months.
One could guess there was some drama between them. But I didn't know what it was, and as I looked at Toshio's figure, I felt like a sucker.
Weren't you dumped rather than being the dumper?
He looked down as I said it, seemingly hitting the mark. Yet, he quietly denied the truth.
Well, it doesn't matter to me whether you were dumped or you left her.
More importantly,
Your mistress's name was Camila Johnson, right?
she's 10 years younger than you, 40 years old.
Why do you know that?
Claiming she had cancer seems like a lie. You got played nicely.
Well, you've been deceiving me all along, so maybe it's a match made in scammer heaven. How do you know it's not cancer? Just knowing her name doesn't mean you know everything.
After you left, my son looked into her. He found out her name and which hospital she frequents. But we couldn't get her diagnosis due to privacy reasons.
So, how do you know it's not cancer?
I'm a nurse, so I have my connections, and that's how I was able to find out. Sure, she was visiting the hospital, but it was for dermatology, you know. It was for an allergic condition that could improve with dietary care.
That's so?
Apparently, she doesn't like dealing with the details, such as diet therapy. Maybe she used her rash to claim she had skin cancer? You, being naive, believed her, right?
Well, yeah, sort of.
She probably thought you were a successful comic artist because you spent money on her generously while you were together. Then, even though the child was with another man, she claimed it was yours to keep you tied down.
There's no proof it's not my child.
Oh, but you just said it wasn't yours. That's my guess. But for a woman who's been with multiple men, isn't that a reasonable suspicion? You, on your part, were trying to keep a woman by spending on her. A mutual interest, right? She figured if you believed the child was yours, you'd believe anything, even cancer. Thinking she could live a comfortable life with a successful comic book artist who could afford such expenses. She had no idea you were dipping into my savings.
How did you know it came from your account?
After you left, I checked the bank book. I had trusted our family, so I never worried about it before. But when I started to pay attention, I noticed there were withdrawals every month. I never imagined my own husband was a thief. I was really shocked. But seeing you now, I think I can forgive that part.
Really? You're kind, Mia.
Well, I don't know about being kind. There's more to this story. Once you and she started living together, and she discovered you were nearly incomeless, she must have been furious and demanded you work. You thought you could get by without working, just like with me, because you believed your small illustrations were enough to support us. So, you told her, I've been supporting the family with my income. It'll be fine moving forward, didn't you? Yeah, exactly. Because we've been living on my income until now. How naive. How did you think a family of 3 could live on your allowance? I kept quiet because I thought telling the truth would hurt your pride.
Thinking that I could support a family is ridiculous. That's stupid. The stupid one is you. She was after your money and got fed up with you being practically unemployed. Then she revealed she didn't have cancer, right? You're right. She was after my money. As soon as she found out my income was low, she started nagging me to work every day. But I'm a comic artist. I told her that's my job, but she said that wasn't a real job because it doesn't make enough to live on. If I don't work, she said we should break up. Exactly. Instead of giving her the divorce papers, she gave them to you. She was lying to me, saying she had cancer when she didn't, making herself out to be some poor, pitiful woman. But you were the one who couldn't see through her lies and ran off to her. Wasn't it your decision? Yeah, you're right. I was really stupid. And then? And then? This is quite an interesting story so far. It could make for good work. But what about after that? How did you end up wrapped in bandages like a mummy? If that part isn't clear, it'd make the comic less interesting. Shocked by being dumped by her, I drank and drove my car too fast. Then, I had an accident, and here I am. Quite a mundane ending, isn't it? That would be a letdown for the readers. My life isn't a comic. It's almost like one. Making fun of people, then running off to a woman, and being used by her, it's practically a comedy. I never thought she'd be like that. Well, love is blind, isn't it? That's why I need your help. Why did you drink and drive? Were you trying to say goodbye to this world? Yeah, at that time, I thought it would be easier to just leave it all behind than to be dumped by her. But after surviving, I don't feel that way anymore. Yet, here I am, covered in bandages, and Camila won't even answer my calls. I don't know what to do. Running into you now must be fate, right? It's not fate. You knew I worked at this hospital. Plus, it's an emergency hospital, so it's inevitable you'd be brought here. No, I think this is fate. You and I are tied together by a red thread. Done. What's that? I've cut the tie between us. We don't need that. Please! Help me out! You know, I'm in internal medicine. I can't take care of you. If you need help, ask a surgical nurse. Take care of me as your wife. I'm not your wife. We divorced 3 months ago. After the way we parted, why would you think I'd want to take care of you? Even if you were the last man on Earth after a catastrophic event, I would not want you. Don't say that. You're not the kind of woman to abandon me, right? That's just wishful thinking. You're a nurse, right? Nurses are supposed to be that way, aren't they? No, nursing is just about following doctors' orders and smiling at patients. It's an easy job. How can you think a nurse doing such an easy job would be that kind? Impossible. They said I might have lasting effects after being discharged. It must be quite serious with all those bandages. Even if you heal, the skin might contract and the pain could be unbearable. It's tough, really, truly. I think it was good that we divorced then. I'm glad I don't have to carry a burden like you anymore. I can't handle this alone. You chose this, so you have to deal with it. You'll probably regret not dying in that accident because of the pain. Nurses can't just ignore their patients. Well, that would be true for a nurse, but I've decided to leave this hospital. Why? The doctor here is starting his own practice and asked for my help, so I decided to assist him. Then that's fine too. I don't have anywhere to live. Let me stay at your place. You should ask your mistress for that. I broke up with her, so that's impossible. Well, we're divorced, so it's impossible for me too. You're going to abandon me? You were the one who abandoned me. A month later, I resigned from my job. While saying my goodbyes, I received a call. Looking at the screen, it was from an unknown number. Normally, I wouldn't answer, but considering it was my last day, I thought it might be someone from the hospital, so I decided to pick up. Then, the caller was someone I'd least expected. In other words, it was Camila Johnson, the woman who took Daniel away. Are you Daniel's ex-wife? She yelled right off the bat, almost like a declaration of war. Yes, who might this be? It doesn't matter who I am. Your husband has been bothering me.
Could you be Camila? The one who took my husband away?
Yes. Do something about it.
You're the one who took him, but I'm glad we're divorced. Thanks for taking him off my hands.
Why would it turn out like this? Even after we broke up, he wants to live together after being discharged, sending me messages every day. Plus, he blames me for his condition, saying it's because of the money he spent on me that we could live. What's with him? He's really creepy.
Really creepy, huh? Not exactly the words you'd expect from a smart woman. Oh, right, she's not the brightest.
So, do something about it. You're a nurse at the hospital he's admitted to, right?
That's only until today. I'm leaving this hospital. And whatever happens between you two, it's none of my business.
It's not none of your business. You're his ex-wife.
So it is none of my business. The same goes for you once you break up, right?
It's not the same at all. I never thought he'd be so clingy.
He was always a weak person.
No money? That's fraud. A scam.
Is the child Daniel's?
Of course not. Daniel keeps saying because the child is his, he needs to be by their side. That we can't break up because of that, spouting all sorts of nonsense. But I've told him the child isn't his, and using the child as leverage is just low.
Resorting to lies and deceit was your doing, so it's only natural you'd have to deal with it.
How am I supposed to live with such a pauper?
You were after his money, but sadly, I was the one supporting him all along. Even though he called himself a comic artist, he hardly wrote anything, not having a serial publication or anything. You should have known he was broke.
I had no idea. I'm so fed up with that annoying man. Now he's not even a mummy, but we'll be left with keloids, looking like a monster.
That's quite a thing to say. The thought occurred to me. Even though they had both been lying to each other, once it came to separating, she was ready to push him down further. Thank you, Camila.
What for?
Talking to you has made up my mind. If you're going to be this awful, I have no reservations.
What are you talking about?
I'll be suing you for damages, so be prepared for that.
Why would you sue me for damages?
Please discuss this with your lawyer.
Wait a minute.
After hanging up, I headed to my ex-husband's hospital room. Just punishing the woman wouldn't be fair. He looked happy to see me as he lay in pain on the bed.
Have you decided to help me?
No, I've come to tell you that I'll be suing you for damages.
Damages? For what?
We divorced because of you.
How can I pay any damages when I'm like this? I can't work, and I certainly don't have the money.
That's not my problem. I've just told Camila I'd be suing for damages.
How can you do something so stupid? Instead of helping, you're pushing me further into hell?
You're the one who grabbed your ticket to hell by your own choice. So, why should I be the one to blame? Don't you think that's absurd?
Because I'm in this condition.
You've always been like this, blaming me, trying to justify yourself. Despite all my efforts for you, you never acknowledged them, only complaining about your hardships. But think about it, you were at home all day, either reading or creating comics, and I never complained. Even if I did, you'd say it was part of your job, your fertilizer.
That's the truth.
Is it? I think the reason your comic never sold is because you lack life experience. Everything is a product of your imagination, so the content lacks depth. Well, that's how it is. Someone who's never worked can't write about workplace relations, and their stories lack depth.
You thought that of me?
Yes, I didn't say it because it was pointless. You've said quite a bit to me, though. When you say something to someone, it's either because you're trying to crush them or you wish for their growth. I didn't feel either towards you.
So, you never really loved me?
That's right. Now that I've analyzed it calmly. And by the way, I've decided to sell the house.
What? That's my house.
No, it's not. That house was given to me by you 3 months ago. So, the deed is in my name.
No way!
I won't be giving you the money from the sale. You said you didn't need it when you left, after all.
What about a place for me to live? Where do I go? You seem to be in touch with Camila, trying to reconcile. But she told me. You're using the child as leverage to get back together, but the child isn't yours. My guess was right. That's ridiculous. So, I'm quitting my job as a nurse here after today. Today, huh? Yes, I'm switching to a clinic. It's far from here, so commuting is impossible. But I don't plan to anyway. That's why I've decided to sell the house. That's unbelievable. Daniel seemed speechless at the news. After undergoing skin graft surgery and being discharged, he couldn't work and had to return to his parents' home. Struggling with pain every day, Daniel had no choice but to rely on his parents. However, his parents were too old to take care of him, so the responsibility fell to his siblings. But even his siblings were cautious, not wanting to upset their wives. Knowing why Daniel ended up in such a state, his sister-in-law was furious, deeming it self-inflicted and upset at his disrespect towards women. She thought he should live alone in an apartment, so she found him a cheap place and kicked him out. The only things in his room were a computer and some bedding. Her rationale was, he was a comic artist, so he should be able to stand on his own. Daniel lamented being abandoned, but to survive, he had to keep drawing comic, though it was more for his own satisfaction than for sales. Eventually, he was so desperate for help that he called me, struggling even to find enough to eat. Help me, I'll starve to death at this rate. I apologize for everything. Please, come help me. Fed up with Daniel's constant whining, I blocked his number. Meanwhile, I've been enjoying my work at the clinic. Lately, I've been spending private time with the clinic's doctor, going out for meals. Though Daniel was a painful memory, the doctor's kindness has helped me recover, and I'm even considering remarrying. Someday, if I remarry the doctor, I plan to send Daniel an invitation. It was a disaster scene. Tire tracks marred the lawn in the yard, and the flower bed that was supposed to be neatly arranged with red brick was a mess. The flowers that should have been blooming were scattered mercilessly on the ground. Red and white petals were dirted with soil, their beauty nowhere to be seen. Both my granddaughter Sarah and I could only stand in shock at the situation. Looking further back, Mia's car, which should have been parked in the backyard, was there. From the look of the tire tracks, it was clear to anyone that Mia's car had wreaked havoc on the garden. Oh, what are you doing standing around like that? Mia came down from the car, smirking as she approached us. Stepping on the pedals with her high heels. What do you mean what's wrong? Why did you drive the car over here? It's a shortcut to the station from the front door. I was thinking of going out, but I decided against it today. She laughed without a hint of remorse. She had no intention of going out, she did this on purpose. How terrible! Sarah's eyes were moist as she spoke in a soft voice, appealing to Mia, who then burst into loud laughter. What a dreadful thing to do. The flower bed that a grade schooler had spent hours, days to complete. I was furious. I felt as if my head was boiling, ready to lash out at Mia at any moment. But then, looking at the scattered red petals on the ground, I realized something. Could it be that flower? Picking up a petal gently, I was certain. And then, with a refreshingly sincere smile I've never had before, I told Mia. Oh, thank you. So you were tidying up the flowers for me? My name is Sally. I'm turning 54 this year. My late brother had a son named Tom. Tom, though my own son, is a responsible young man, working hard at a reputable company. Tom married for the first time about 10 years ago. His partner was a straightforward, easy to talk to, wonderful woman. Though their home was a bit far from ours, she would come over to my place, complaining, "My husband is always away on business trips, and I'm so bored," and she would do the housework or keep me company. It didn't take long for me to grow as fond of her as if she were my own daughter. After a while, Tom and his wife had a girl named Sarah. Even as a toddler, Sarah would reach out to me, laughing joyfully, and I couldn't help but adore her. Tom and I believed this happiness would last forever. But things didn't go as well as we hoped. Tom's wife fell seriously ill not long after giving birth to Sarah. Despite a long battle with her illness, she passed away a few years ago. Why did such a bright and kind person have to leave this world? What saved us from our grief was the young Sarah. I can't count how many times my granddaughter's smile has saved me. Seeing his daughter grow every day, Tom thought he couldn't just mourn forever and decided to raise her by himself. Though I helped as much as I could, I believed there must be something only a mother could provide. During this time, Tom met a woman at work who got along with him well, Mia. Though she was 7 years his junior, being 23 at the time, she made several advances. Initially confused, Tom didn't seem to mind it. Especially as he found Mia's assertiveness reminiscent of his late wife. At one point, Tom confided in me. The word remarriage keeps popping into my head. I feel terrible about it, though. If it means you and Sarah can be happy, then I'm all for it. With my support, it seemed like he made up his mind. And so, Tom ended up remarrying Mia. With the remarriage, Tom proposed that we live together. It seems he was worried about me living alone since I had a stroke over a decade ago. I could manage daily life, but due to the after effects, I had to quit the flower arranging classes I had been taking since my youth. Seeing how down I was, not being able to do what I loved with flowers, he must have thought it through. I felt grateful and guilty at the same time. Having lived with my in-laws when I was younger, I knew all too well the discomfort and difficulties that come with it. Living with others is more painful than one might think. I refused several times, worrying that I might be a burden to Mia. However, since Mia assured me in front of me that it was no problem, I gratefully agreed to move in together. As a result, Mia and I ended up living under the same roof. I was looking forward to it, knowing Sarah liked her, but Mia and I didn't get along at all. Having had a good relationship with the previous wife only added to my confusion about feeling out of place with Mia. First off, it appeared Mia had a habit of spending frivolously. I heard she was a woman who originally didn't buy brand name items and lived moderately. But after marrying, Mia was different. Having quit her job upon marriage, she started taking lessons in tea ceremony and flower arranging with Tom's money. She began buying expensive tools for these hobbies, such as tea bowls, tea caddy, and high-quality vases for flower arranging. Even a single tool was quite pricey, but she always bought the better ones, bragging about them to the neighbors and her classmates. I've never seen her practicing tea ceremony or flower arranging at home. The tools she bought are just gathering dust in the storage. I wonder if this is normal nowadays, and I'm just unaware. I couldn't help but see it as her playing the role of the elegant young wife. Still, not wanting to worsen our mother-in-law and daughter-in-law relationship, I didn't say much. I had other concerns as well. Mia seemed to dislike the fact that I was physically disabled. Ever since the stroke, my hands haven't moved the way I want them to. I can manage daily life, but the finer tasks are difficult. I knew Mia was mocking me behind my back. Because I overheard her telling her friends and classmates, taking care of my mother-in-law is so hard. Despite leaving all the household chores to me, it felt wrong to be talked about like that. When my mother-in-law says this is better, or that's better, and tells you to do the work instead. That's what she'd say when she thought I might hear. I even thought about discussing it with Tom. However, Tom's job involves a lot of traveling. Since the remarriage, he hasn't been home much, possibly as a rebound from asking him to reduce his business trips before. Moreover, Mia only does some housework when Tom is home, as if to deceive him. Complaining might only worsen the problem. I was also concerned about Sarah. When she's at home with Mia, she seems uncomfortable. I thought she was just nervous about living with a new family member, but it went on for too long. I also noticed that Mia's look at Sarah was the same as when she mocked me. Sadly, there was no SOS from Sarah. Sarah, is something wrong? I casually asked her. Each time, Sarah would look puzzled and then quickly smile, saying, "No, nothing's wrong, Grandma." Is it my imagination that her smile seems forced? Maybe it's just because I'm the mother-in-law and I'm not supposed to like the daughter-in-law living with us. Is this what people mean when they say mother-in-law and daughter-in-law relationships are like this? Fortunately, my concerns about living together are only with Mia. Sarah and Tom are very caring towards me, despite my disability. Especially Sarah, who seems interested in flowers. Since she found out I used to do flower arranging, she often asks me about how to arrange flowers. That was a healing time for me. On a bright Sunday, I was getting ready to go out for a doctor's visit. I had to be monitored for high blood pressure and poor blood circulation due to a stroke. As I was about to leave the house with my bag, my granddaughter Sarah came running to me. "Hey, Grandma! I've thought of a special present to make you feel better." "A present?" "Yeah. Look forward to it." With those words, she opened the door and stepped outside ahead of me with a light step. Given that I had been hospitalized as well as visiting the doctor, kind-hearted Sarah must have been worried about my health. Her smile at that moment seemed genuine, and I felt happy. After that, Sarah began to spend more time in the garden after school or late at night, fussing over something. Driven by curiosity, I approached her in the garden one night after the sun had set. "What are you doing?" Startled by my sudden appearance, Sarah blushed and said, "I'm making a flower bed." Perhaps influenced by me, she had been in touch with flowers daily. Despite being a grade schooler, the flower bed was taking shape. Feeling a bit shy, but wanting to cheer me up, Sarah filled my heart with warmth. How lucky I was to live with such a kind granddaughter. I eagerly awaited the day the flower bed would be completed. But it seems I wasn't the only one who knew about Sarah's flower bed project. Mia had noticed Sarah working in the garden after school and at night. Upon hearing the reason for the flower bed, Mia praised Sarah excessively for her wonderful act. I was chilled to the bone. Because I noticed that her eyes weren't smiling. A bad feeling washed over me. I could only pray that my premonition would not come true. Contrary to my hopes, the day the flower bed was completed, an incident occurred. "Grandma! The flower bed is ready." On another sunny Sunday, Sarah came to me with a smile, announcing the completion of the flower bed. With a spring in my step, I reached for the doorknob to go out to the garden. That's when I heard a loud engine noise and the sound of something breaking. The noise continued for a while, and Sarah and I were too frightened to move from the entrance. "Grandma, I'm scared." Sarah and I held hands tightly, waiting for the noise to stop. Finally, when the noise subsided, we cautiously opened the door to look out into the garden. It was a disaster scene. Tire tracks marred the lawn, and the flower bed, which was supposed to be neatly arranged with red brick, was a mess. The flowers that should have been blooming were mercilessly scattered on the ground. The red and white petals were dirted with soil, their beauty nowhere to be seen. Both Sarah and I could only stand in shock at the situation. Looking further back, Mia's car, which should have been parked in the backyard, was there. From the look of the tire tracks, it was clear to anyone that Mia's car had wreaked havoc on the garden. "Hey, what are you doing standing around like that?" Mia came down from the car, smirking as she approached us, stepping on the pedals with her high heels. "What do you mean? Why did you drive the car over here?" "It's a shortcut to the station from the front door. I was thinking of going out, but I decided against it today." She laughed without a hint of remorse. She had no intention of going out, she did this on purpose. It became clear to me then how much Mia detested me. And that she also harbored deep dislike for Sarah, her stepdaughter, in her heart. Come to think of it, I now recall. There were times when Sarah's belongings went missing, or when Sarah, who is usually kind and gentle, was scolded for mischief she hadn't done. All that might have been Mia's doing, hating Sarah. I had wondered about it before, but now it makes sense. Sarah's face, frightened as she looked at Mia, told me that my suspicions were not unfounded. "Horrible!" Sarah's eyes welled up with tears as she appealed in a small voice. Mia, seemingly pleased with herself, laughed loudly. She wasn't even trying to hide her disdain anymore. What a terrible thing to do. A flower bed that a grade schooler had spent hours, days to complete. Even if you were given such flowers, it would be a nuisance, so it's just as well. I should be thanked, really. Mia spoke words one wouldn't expect from someone who practices flower arranging, as if she couldn't see our reactions at all. I was furious. Wrapped in a sensation as if my head was boiling, I felt like I could lash out at Mia any moment. However, when Sarah tugged at the hem of my clothes, I snapped back to reality. With tears brimming in her large eyes, she desperately shook her head. "Grandma, no. I'm okay." Seeing her like this, I managed to calm down. Even after regaining my composure, the devastation around us was unchanged. But then, looking at the scattered red petals on the ground, I realized something. Could it be that flower? Picking up a petal gently, I was certain. And then, with a refreshingly sincere smile I've never had before, I told Mia. "Oh, thank you. So you were tidying up the flowers for me?" I think my tone was quite clear. "What?" Mia was taken aback. It was natural since she was expecting anger from me. I continued, looking down at the petal in my hand. "Because this is a cyclamen, right?" I had realized that the flower Sarah planted was a cyclamen. Cyclamen, with its variety of colors like red, pink, and white, is a charming flower. However, it's also known for being an inappropriate gift for the ill due to associations with bad luck implied by its name. Although I had taught Sarah how to grow and arrange flowers, I hadn't taught her about the meanings or taboos, thinking it would be too complex for her young mind. So, she must have chosen it simply for its beauty. It might be considered somewhat inappropriate for someone who is ill. "Mia, you realized it was a cyclamen and acted the villain to teach us it was a bad idea?" Mia looked back at me, bewildered. As Mia and I were facing off, a person arrived at the gate. She was a woman dressed neatly, exuding elegance and grace. "Teacher!" Mia exclaimed in surprise. The woman was the teacher of the flower arranging class Mia attended. Her cool gaze probably held a hint of sternness. "Mia, good day." "Hello. What brings you here?" Mia asked, her voice faltering under the teacher's stern tone, creating a solemn atmosphere. "I had an appointment nearby and came running when I heard a loud noise. I saw everything." "No, this is..." Mia, caught in the act by the last person she wanted to see. Her voice rose in panic. The teacher was the most renowned flower arranger in the area. Mia knew this and had started attending her classes. "That's enough. I don't want to hear any excuses. Sally has been attending my class for a long time. We have a long history." "Huh?" Yes, the teacher was right. The flower arranging class I had attended was the same one Mia was going to. Since I hadn't attended since the day I had the stroke, it was natural Mia didn't know. I was the first student the teacher taught when she opened her class. In a way, I was her first disciple. I had secretly greeted her when I found out my son's wife had started attending her class. However, Mia's reputation among the other students wasn't good. Initially envious of her expensive tools, people grew tired of her boasting and drifted away. The teacher had visited my home several times to hear about Mia's behavior. Never crossing paths with Mia, who often went out during the day. She had seen Sarah working on the flower bed. "Are you making a flower bed?" "Yes. I wanted to cheer Grandma up because she loves flowers, so I'm trying my best." Touched by this, the teacher had given her advice several times. She hadn't known about the plant types of flowers, though. As I recalled these moments, the conversation between Mia and the flower arranging teacher continued. "No, there's a deep reason behind this," Mia began, scrambling for various excuses, but the facts seen by the teacher remained unchanged. Moreover, the teacher had noticed that Mia hadn't realized the flower was a cyclamen. "A person who cannot cherish not only flowers but also family has no place in my class," she told unequivocally. It was an expulsion. "I had high hopes since you were Sally's daughter-in-law, being my first disciple." "First disciple? My mother-in-law." Mia looked humiliated. Possibly frustrated at the thought that the mother-in-law she had belittled held a higher position than herself. Disappointment was all she could feel, looking at people only through their titles. I was more concerned about Sarah, who had suffered much greater emotional wounds than Mia. Fortunately, Sarah seemed calmer than before. "It's a pity about the flower bed, but shall we rebuild it? Can I join you this time?" At that, Sarah nodded slightly. After the teacher left with a graceful bow, we returned home. It wasn't long before rumors of Mia's expulsion from the flower arranging class spread throughout the neighborhood. Furthermore, because it was part of the same 3 arts as tea ceremony, the news seemed to have reached the tea ceremony teacher as well. She was also told not to come back. Naturally, the story of the expulsion spread, detailing how Mia had destroyed her stepdaughter's flower bed out of spite and insulted the flower arranging teacher's setup. Mia tried to make excuses to those around her, but given her usually arrogant attitude, it seemed no one was willing to listen. The rumors had probably reached Tom, who had returned from a business trip. He questioned Sarah and me and learned the whole truth from the teacher. He became aware of the daily mistreatment we had faced. Looking back, I regret not consulting Tom sooner. Perhaps Sarah would not have been affected. Furthermore, it came to light that Mia had been verbally abusing Sarah daily and had taken the allowance and New Year's money I had given her. No wonder she seemed uncomfortable at home every day. I regret not noticing sooner. Upon further investigation, it was discovered that Mia had also unilaterally cancelled an educational insurance policy, using the funds for her hobbies and luxury items. Tom was deeply troubled by the hardship he had caused us. He was furious at Mia's treatment. Divorce. What you did to Sarah and my mother. I'll sue you. He demanded a divorce from Mia, seeking compensation for the misused funds and our emotional distress. Faced with the demand for divorce and compensation, Mia, realizing she had no chance of winning, frantically begged Sarah and me for forgiveness. I'm sorry. I won't do it again. Sarah, you'd be lonely without me, right? And you need me because of your disability, don't you? Please, forgive me. Sarah hid behind Tom, terrified. I couldn't possibly forgive Mia for ruining my granddaughter's feelings. I'm sorry, but I can't forgive you. Mia was divorced and had to leave the house. Moreover, she had to take out loans to pay the compensation. Disowned by her own parents, who told her not to get involved, she had no choice but to repay the debt on her own. Having lived a life of leisure, she must be finding it tough. Apparently, Mia had always aspired to be a housewife. Hence why she approached Tom, who had a relatively high income for his age. Even after starting work, she seemed to be constantly in trouble with interpersonal relationships. The reason I know so much is that she came to our house trying to reconcile, sharing her situation. After being fired from several jobs in a row and being in dire financial straits, she tearfully spoke of her hardships, far from the elegant young lady she aspired to be. Sarah and I were exhausted by the constant doorbell ringing during the day. Every time Mia came, we had to call the police to send her away, and Tom says it looks like we'll have to sue her again because of that. To prevent further interference from Mia, we sold the house and moved. I'm really sorry for not realizing Mia's malice and causing you and Sarah such fear. He requested a transfer to a department focused on remote work, which was readily accepted by his understanding superiors, increasing his time with Sarah significantly. I've realized that more than a mother's presence, I need to be involved with Sarah myself. That's right. Sarah's smile is the best proof. Spending more time with Tom, who was often away on business trips, Sarah seems to have more smiles than before. Perhaps it's due to my diligent rehabilitation, or maybe it's the increased time spent with my son and granddaughter. My stroke after effects are gradually improving. Even the doctor at the hospital was impressed by the great progress. When I reported the good progress to Sarah and Tom, they were overjoyed, jumping up with happiness. Now, we are cultivating seasonal flowers together in the new flower bed Sarah made at our new home, teaching her the meanings of the flowers along the way. When Tom has time, he joins us in the garden. The flower arranging teacher, who occasionally helps us, has invited Sarah to join the lessons, emphasizing that the essence of flower arranging is the spirit one puts into the flowers and people, and she believes Sarah has what it takes to excel in it. Flower arranging, which brings happiness to those who see it, is indeed suitable for a granddaughter who cares about her family. Sarah herself is eager to try, saying, I want to go for a trial lesson next time. Tom is also enthusiastic about making the arrangements for her participation. If my hands get a bit better, I might return to flower arranging too. Looking forward to practicing together with Sarah, I plan to continue my rehabilitation. Though challenges may lie ahead, I pray for the continuation of this peaceful life with Tom and Sarah.
Grandma, the flowers have bloomed.
As if responding to my feelings, the flowers in the garden gently swayed.